care.
Okay, thanks. We're live. Guys, hey everybody. Welcome to another Skill with Stability Speaker Spotlight Live. These conversations are designed to give you a behind the scenes look at the voices coming to Skill with Stability this 2026 and why their message matters if you're serious about building a business that actually lasts. At Skill with Stability, we believe growth shouldn't cost your faith, your family, your health, or your peace. We're here for business owners who want to grow the right way with systems, stewardship, and leadership that create stability instead of chaos, which is our number one goal. And one of the biggest places business owners lose peace today is their numbers. You can be making more money than ever and still feel like something isn't adding up. And today's guest is helping with exactly this, helping business owners answer that question by learning how to actually listen to what their numbers are saying. So I'm really excited to have Christian Brim here with us, known as many or to many as the prophet. That's such a play on tongue, especially for a second language here.
That wasn't even ChatGPT. I came up with that one all myself.
There you go. That's creative. Christian, you've spent the last decade helping successful founders diagnose the financial blind spots that keep their businesses stuck, which I'm so excited to learn more about. And through the session, I'm excited to dig in a little bit more. Your session at Scale with Stability, it's called the Profit, what your numbers are screaming that you're not hearing, which I cannot wait for you to share more. Christian, first off, thank you for being here. I'm so glad how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Karen. It's good seeing you again.
Good to see you again. Yeah, and cannot wait to see you in person. Finally, because I don't think we've met in person. You met JC in person last time.
No, I was in Managua with you.
No, I wasn't. I couldn't make it that time.
You weren't?
I was
Why
not.
Why did I think that you were there? That's weird. Okay, I'm sorry.
I was there in spirit.
Okay.
Everybody was there. But Christian, you've worked with a lot of businesses that look successful on paper, right? Like we've talked about like the numbers or feeling successful, but they also are feeling stuck. What are some of the early warning signs that maybe you have seen that something is off with them and their business?
Well, I think there are a couple that I think that there are a couple that you should be monitoring. Revenue being probably not one. You talked about people seeing that top line grow and feeling like there's still problems. I think cash is probably the best indicator of your business health, for lack of any other metric you track. And that may sound simple, but if you might have seasonality in your business where, it goes up and down, but what is the trend? And it being on top of that is key. Now, if you're in a position where you don't have any cash flow reserves, you're just like robbing Peter to pay Paul and wondering how you're going to make payroll next time, you're already there. You've got a problem, right? But assuming that you have some type of cash balance, where is that trending? The second thing is margin. There's a saying I didn't coin, but I think it's brilliant, and it's revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. And that margin that you're making, I say gross profit, not net profit, I think is the second thing that business owners need to be monitoring very closely. Like every month, they need to have an idea of what that number is and what the trend is.
I like that. Why do you think so many companies, as they're growing, I think a big goal for most business owners is how do we get to the 6-7 figures, in our business? And that's their main focus. I've seen, especially in the digital marketing agency world, I've seen that a lot, focusing on the revenue, getting to the 6-7 figures. Why do you think so many of these companies that are hitting those numbers, even though like they're hitting this plateaus, even though they're doing more than ever, they're doing tons more money than they have ever done, yet they are feeling that they're stuck?
Well, I mean, the reality is that the numbers tell a story. It's a language. It's, people get all caught up in saying, well, I can't understand the numbers. I'm not good with math, blah, blah, blah. It is a language, and it is the language of business. And so what I would assume in those situations where your top line is growing, but you feel like you're not making any more money, or you're just more busy, that what that story is that you are growing the wrong way. If you think about it, and then why I said to focus on margin, growing is easy. All you have to do is give shit away. I mean, I'm sorry for the language, but that's the easy thing. Like, all you have to do is lower your price. You can grow, but are you making money? And if you are looking at your margin, how much you're making. So in a digital agency, you could grow that top line by bringing on a bunch of ad clients where you have a pass-through cost and you're not making any money on it. And that top line's growing, but you're not making any more money. You're just doing more work. And that's what I'm talking about, is what story are the numbers telling you about what your business is doing. Numbers are the end result of business activity. So, the numbers are a kind of a milestone, a mirror of like, are you on the right path? And looking at it over a period of time where you can see trends, it forces you to be brutally honest about, your activities as a business.
Why do you think so many business owners struggle to put this like focus on numbers until it's too late? I feel like that's the number conversation for most people that are not, they're not like maybe like financially or super comfortable, or like looking at numbers as like the default, in their day-to-day as business owners. It's kind of like an activity that they know that they have to do. Why do you feel that is the case for business owners, when I think, as you're mentioning this, it's a result of all the actions that we put into, and as business owners, we're also, taught, I think from even the beginning, that if you don't measure it, if you don't like keep track with it, like how are you going to improve that, right? Why do you feel like there's like this friction in, understanding your numbers, really focusing on listening to them, like you're sharing that they tell you a story, yet I think the biggest issue is that we're not willing to go and like listen or read the story.
Honestly, I think it's two things. I think it's first fear, and second, it's laziness. I say that with all respect, because I've been lazy about it. Like, I'm not casting stones. I'm a victim of my own laziness. Constantly I hear the like excuses of, I'm not good with numbers, I haven't been educated, even blaming their provider. My CPA's, not good, he's not giving me what I want, blah, blah, blah. There's a concept I was introduced to, and I can't remember who coined the phrase, but it was this concept of know enough. As a business owner, we have a lot of hats that we wear. And there's a lot of things that we have to know. We need to know how to market. We need to know how to do operations, manage a team. We need to know about legal and HR and finance. Do we have to be experts in those things? No, but we have to know enough. And not knowing does not absolve you of the responsibility. It doesn't go away just because you ignore it. If any of you have been in business long enough and had a lawsuit, you're like, well, wait a second, I didn't know this. I didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't matter. You're still responsible for it, and your ignorance is not going to be an excuse.
Absolutely, it's not like it's going to go away. I love that. I know that we haven't talked about your background, so I want to make sure that we allocate that some time for that. Which, I'm curious of like what got you into this topic. Obviously you're very passionate about it enough to say, hey, I want to go to Arkansas to talk about this to a bunch
Who
of
didn't
people.
want to go to Arkansas?
who doesn't, right? Like, I feel like everybody's like, wait, Arkansas? Yeah.
It's a beautiful state. It's a beautiful
state. And we're very close to Oklahoma. Just, I know that you're working actively with businesses today, but I'm curious of where did this started? How do you get to this point where you're helping businesses today with this topic?
Well, my origin story is my family had a family business, and it was uncles and grandparents, and like we lived in a smaller town, and the business and family was very meshed. There was no distinction between what was business and what was family. And when I was 16, the business went bankrupt. We were in the oil field service business. The oil bust happened in Oklahoma and Texas, and company went bankrupt. And we went from, literal limos and helicopters to living in a rent house and driving some really crappy foreign car. I don't even remember what it was. And all my family dispersed. They had to leave the state to go find a way to make a living. And it wasn't the loss of things that bothered me. That didn't impact me. What impacted me was the loss of family, that family fracture that happened. And even early on in college, I was already reflecting on that, saying, I don't know how, but that didn't have to happen that way. Like, I saw all the money, and yeah, I understand that things happened that the business couldn't control, but it just didn't feel right. Like there had to be a different way to get through that, and so that is my passion. I started 29 years ago doing this to help business owners not end up in the situation that my family and I did.
JC, something that JC and I talk all the time, especially with business owners, it's not that skill with stability, what the topic for this event is, not that by attending our sessions, you're going to like find a way to make your business more stable. Business is chaotic. Like things are going to happen that are completely out of your control, right? Like, I mean, just think about COVID, right? Like who could have foreseen that? Who could have prepared for that? Yes, you could have prepared financially for that and create some opportunities. But I think what's most important there is, how do we remain stable? How are we becoming the source of stability within our business that can impact our teams, and the life of our clients? And I think, it's investing your time as a business owner in learning and doing some of the activities that are not necessarily the most fun activities. They're not necessarily the things that, but like what you're saying, it's like not being lazy at, focusing on something that's so important, like your numbers. I come from a different background, I grew up in Nicaragua, Latin America. So like money is like a different, like there's, everybody has a relationship with money, right? And it's a little bit different, but I do think that the more focus we put into understanding, like the ebbs and flows of it, the less panic we're gonna, decisions we're gonna make based on panic, when we see things changing. And if we see trends, year over year, oh man, like this is a low month, let me not stop marketing, for example, just because we're a marketing agency too. But let me not stop marketing right now just because the month was low, when we know that the trend has been the case, for the seasonality of the business or whatever that may be. And in fact, this is going to help us get ahead, of like the curve, because a lot of people are going to make that decision. So I love that. I love that you are taking your personal experience to now impact the lives of others. I think that's the beautiful thing about going through the very difficult times in life, right? That we're able to make somebody else's life better and easier because of that. Yeah. So I love that you're doing that. So thank you for sharing that story. I didn't know about that. I'm sure it was very difficult.
It was not fun. No. And one of the things I eat my own cooking.
Yeah.
And I will tell you a recent example of that.
Yeah.
That 6 years ago, we made some changes in the business, and there's, of course, this is going back into COVID, happened during this time, but we made this pivot into serving creatives during that period of time. And when I went back and looked at the numbers for the last 6 years, and I look at what we had spent in marketing and advertising to grow that segment of the business, and then I looked at the actual results.
Mm-hmm.
I shared with my team just this week, over the last 6 years, we've wasted $1 million. $1 million gone. Now, you say, why am I sharing that story? It's because I'm telling you that everybody struggles with these things as business owners. It's sometimes hard because of our relationship with money to be honest with ourselves. But I think the story that the financials tell is true. And you have to be willing to accept the reality of what they're telling you.
Yeah, there's some really hard truths that we get to discover, about ourselves, the decisions that we're making, and then also the hopes that we have and how they end up resulting. I totally agree with that. Going back into some of the things that business owners are navigating, on a day-to-day basis, if a lot of people that I mentioned in the past, like, really focus on that revenue aspect.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, right, if somebody only looks at the revenue, what critical parts of the story are they missing when they should be looking at the whole picture? And what are the different parts of this picture that they should be looking at besides revenue?
Yeah, I think revenue, again, is largely irrelevant. I mean, the margin, and the margin is your revenue less the costs to produce it. Okay, yeah. So whatever your business, I'm not talking about any overhead items, insurance, rent, phone, none of those things, even marketing and advertising. Those are all not included in margin. But what you bring in, revenue minus the cost to produce it. So there's usually labor in that. There's usually materials if you're in a physical business, inventory, whatever. That difference is your profit driver. And you have to manage that. If you're not managing your margin to increase, then you're largely just spinning your wheels. And the relationship of that margin to your employee count, which is a number called the direct labor efficiency. And we'll get into that into the workshop. But if you think about it, as a business owner, most of your important decisions come down to people, right? Mm-hmm. And how you manage your people to increase that gross profit is 90% of what you are going to be effective with as a business.
Yeah, I completely agree. When you were talking with the team, you mentioned that in your session, you're going to be teaching a financial diagnostic, if I'm not mistaken. Can you, at just high level, tell us what does this diagnostic actually involve? Like, what are people going to be doing inside of your session? Because I think that sounds to me like it's going to be a very work together. Let's figure this out. You're going to get some clarity out of this diagnostic. Tell me more about that.
Well, it starts with robes, chanting, incense, candles. No. There's 1,001 ways to slice and dice numbers, right? My diagnostic is the highest level, highest impact. We're looking at the 20% of the numbers, or the 20% of your activities that are going to produce 80% of your results. Okay. We're not going to get into the minutia because it's largely irrelevant. We're not going to say, oh, your utilities expense, or it seems way out of line, or your insurance, you could get that cheaper. That's not, no. what we're going to do is we're going to have a hot seat, and we're going to actually go through the process with a business owner with their information, and I'm going to walk them through this diagnostic and show them what I see, and then we're going to compare that to what that business owner perceives the reality to be, right? Because that's where the disconnect usually is the visionary has this idea and they're living in the future. This is what I want to build. This is the effort that I'm doing to get there. Okay, great. What do the numbers say? And where are the potential disconnects? Because it's not really about like hammering somebody over, oh, you're doing it wrong. That's not the point. The point is to give you clarity of where you actually are.
I love that. One of the things that you mentioned in your talk description is that you really want to focus also on that benchmarking and helping businesses owners understand. What do you think it's so important to compare your numbers as a business owner against your industry?
Well, averages are dangerous, right? I mean, I won't get into that, but like but it is data, right? And so when you benchmark against your peers, which basically says, okay, people that are in the same business, similar size, similar geography, how are they performing? That industry average is distributed on a bell curve. There are people that are doing worse, people that are doing better. But it gives you data to say, okay, if you're trying to be the market leader, if you're trying to attain 10% market share, your financial data is going to be different than the average, right? But that gives you a I don't know what another word for benchmark, a grounding point to say, are you on track, off track?
I like that. As you're looking at numbers with business owners, what have you seen in the past? What has been the most expensive, maybe blind spot that you've seen founders like really ignore in their business that continues to be repeated, over time?
Well, you said it up front: growing and not growing, more busy, not making more money. Like I was 15 years ago, I was in a room with Vern Harnish, author of Scaling Up and Rockefeller Habits. And it was a group of entrepreneurs. And all of these entrepreneurs had 7-figure businesses. And he asked us, how many of you could cut your employee headcount, do less and make more? And virtually every hand went up. So there was this understanding, we all recognized that like we're working too hard for too little, right? But there is this trend for entrepreneurs to want to grow and want to do more and seeking out that vision, which is great. That's what makes us what we are. But again, what is the reality? And there's nothing wrong with having a smaller business and making more money. At the end of the day, I'd rather have $1 million bottom line than a $10 million top line. Like, I don't really care what the top line is.
I so agree with that. Like one of the questions that we ask ourselves, because we've been through that season where like revenue was the thing and that's what we were really shooting and like trying to accomplish. And then we found ourselves in the same spot that you're like literally talking about right now, where we had so much revenue, but then first off, like the headaches, that come with a bigger business, and not everybody is starting a business to have those headaches. I feel like there's some people that are very mission driven, they want to, go to the Everest Mount. Like maybe you don't need to go to the Everest, in order to have a healthy lifestyle, right? Like it's just like, it's one of those things that, like you kind of like choose your own poison in some ways. But the question that, we started asking ourselves as we were navigating, how do we simplify our lives? Because we went through that season, of wanting to accomplish a lot and then realize that the headaches were not worth the gain was not worth the pain, right? And so we always ask ourselves, for the sake of what, right? Like, for the sake of what are we doing this? Like, what is really the end goal? And is this going to help us achieve, as we want to grow our businesses, we also want to be present parents. We also want to be there for our spouse. We also want to be, build a team, that feels encouraged, that it's happy to do what they're doing. And I think asking yourself as a business owner that question is, for the sake of what am I doing? Like, I'm doing all of this for the sake of what? What am I losing? Because you always have to say no to some things, right, in order to say yes to others. I love that you have this perspective, and I'm really excited, Christian, that you're going to be focusing on this with everybody at the event. I'm curious, as the last question, what is your vision for everybody that is coming to your session? What do you want them to leave with? If somebody attends your session, and applies just one thing they learn, what kind of breakthrough could it create in their business?
I think the purpose of the workshop and the diagnostic and that conversation is for you to have the tools to have clarity. If you participate in the hot seat, then you're going to have clarity. I'm going to show you where you are. What you do with that is up to you. Like, I'm not your priest. I'm not here to absolve you of your sin. I'm just giving you clarity to say, this is where you are, like a prophet. And I picked that name on purpose because, the Old Testament prophets would say, this is the path you're on, right? And this is where you're going if you continue on that path. And that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a vision through your numbers of what path you're on.
I love it. I've been recently really focused on this whole concept of the gifts, the biblical gifts that we have, or that we're supposed to have, and how to discover them. So I love that the fact that you make that clarification, because I feel like a lot of people, when they hear about a prophet, it's like, oh, like, it's the future, they're gonna tell me something like that I've never heard before. No, they're just probably just gonna speak truth to you, in a way that you actually understand. It's something that deep in your heart, but somebody just needs to keep you accountable for this, and having that opportunity to be sometimes call out, it's something that we need in business, to refocus, to pivot, our attention to the things that really matter. So thank you so much for leading this session. I'm really excited. I know that we have a lot of people that have bought their tickets, which I cannot wait. It's happening so soon, in almost 30 days, which kind of like breaks, I don't know. It's mind blowing for me as a host, but we still have some people that are like thinking about getting, their tickets. What would be your number one advice? What would you tell to somebody that is thinking about getting their tickets that hasn't gotten theirs already?
Well, I understand. I have not attended this event before, so I don't have any experience, and I can't really speak to any of the other speakers because, frankly, I haven't heard any of them. They look amazing. I'm excited to hear, what they have to say. Coming to my workshop, you're going to leave with the ability to know where your business is and have the honest conversation with yourself about, am I on the right path? And to me, that's invaluable. It is well worth the ticket.
I love it. Well, you heard it, guys. If you haven't made the decision, pretty much go make it. This is something that you really want to have somebody that's walking you through this number. This is not something that comes natural to you. Financial, expertise and numbers is not your language. This will be the opportunity not only to do it there in person with somebody like Christian Brim that has been doing this and helping business owners as a whole, but also you get to experience what it is to be in a community with other people that have the same mindset of growth, that want to achieve this growth without forsaking, what matters really the most. So cannot wait to see everybody. This is happening April 22nd to the 24th. If you want to learn more, go to scalewithstability.com/summit, and we'll see you there.